I am Brian. I consider myself a creative problem solver. Um, I'm not easily discouraged by problems. It's not to say I don't ever get sad or upset about things because that's not realistic. It's not human. But I guess I'm just not easily discouraged because I often see them as growth opportunities. I think to myself, if I can get through this, then I'll at least be better than I was yesterday. And that's pretty much my goal every day, is to be better than I was the day before, to grow stronger and learn from my mistakes. And so I'm pretty sure I get most of that drive from my family, like my mother and father, after witnessing some of the things that they had to deal with when they raised me, because I wasn't an easy child to raise on the south side of Chicago. But I know a lot of that comes from legacies before them, like my great grandmother, Addie Wyatt. My great grandmother, Addie Wyatt, is one of my greatest inspirations, like Dr. King. She is most notably known as one of the first African American women to be vice president of a major labor union. She is also recognized as one of the first African American women to be named Time Person of the Year in Time magazine. But to me, she was my great grandmother, who was a pastor of our family church at Vernon Park Church of God in Chicago. And I would love going to her house because she had the most amazing stories. And to me, they were more than stories. It seems like they were untold legends or myths, because it sounds like the stuff that you would find in history books and in textbooks, but I never saw anything like that when I grew up in school. I never read anything in those books. Everything that I learned about our history and her history, and her relationship with Dr. King, was from the stories that I heard from her. I think what made it real for me was all the photos I would see around her house, of the work that she had done around the nation, for people of all colors, of all genders. They were like her receipts, I guess. And she would always tell me, and I'll never forget it because it was like a broken record. Every time I visited her, she would say the same thing. She would say, you want to live your life well, so that when you look back on everything that you had done and every choice that you made, you want to say that I'm glad I did instead of I wished I had. And I know that she didn't keep the photos around to show proof of the work that she done. She was keeping those memories so that she can look up on her wall at the end of the day and say, I'm glad I did. It was a photo of Dr. King in my great-grandparents' house in Chicago. I believe in their basement, where they often organize meetings. Dr. King was listening attentively to my great-grandparents, to my great-grandmother Addie and her husband Claude Wyatt. She was instrumental, she and him were instrumental in building grassroots movements in support for Dr. King to organize protests and some of the civil rights work in Chicago. But in that photo, what made it real to me is the fact that everyone sees Dr. King as the one who gave these great speeches, who inspired others. But in this photo, you saw a man who was being inspired by someone else, by others. And it was humbling to think that it was my family, from my ancestors, that were inspiring him and helping him build support. And that humanized him to me, because instead of seeing him as something that we should aspire to be, it made it seem more real that, hey, I can help continue his work by just being a good person and doing my part to make the world a better place, to make the nation a better place. After she became an ordained minister in 1955, I believe, Addie and her husband Claude Wyatt, my great-grandfather, began their work in the civil rights movement. She and him helped raise funds for Dr. King and his Montgomery Improvement Association that he served on at the time. In addition to that, she served as labor advisor to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, which was founded by Dr. King. In addition to that, she participated in the March on Washington and the March from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. So she worked closely with him for a few endeavors, and is recognized for her civil rights work. Like Dr. King, Addie was instrumental in breaking a lot of barriers. I would say that the difference between the two of them is that my great grandmother was fighting on three fronts. She was fighting as a laborer, she was fighting as an African American, and she was fighting as a woman. And in that capacity, her legacy is in shattering all those barriers through her work as a leader in a labor union for equality and inclusivity for women, especially through her work with Dr. King for civil rights, and through her work while she was in position with Eleanor Roosevelt's Commission on the Status of Women. She served on the Labor Legislation Committee. She was a founding member of the National Organization of Women. So she was fighting for justice on multiple fronts, on all three fronts. This is not to downplay or not give credit to any of the work that Dr. King did, but he didn't face a lot of the barriers that my grandmother did as a woman. And I think that third level of challenges and ceilings that she faced is what inspires me, is that she didn't just see a problem and let it be. She spoke up, and like Dr. King, who used his gifts of speech and talents to unify people, she did the same. She knew she couldn't do it alone, so she unified through unions and organizations in order to achieve the same goals that her and Dr. King fought for during that time. Martin Luther King Day means something different to me than it would to most people. A lot of people might remember all the stories and the movies that are about him, but for me, I remember that one photo, in my grandmother's house. And that photo reminds me that Dr. King, like me, was just a man. He was just a man with an idea, a dream, if you may. But he knew that in order to bring that idea to life, to make that dream come true, he needed help from others. So he used his strengths to inspire others and to get support behind his vision, his dream. And he was able to achieve many great things because of that, but he was still humble enough to seek advice and wisdom from others and be inspired by others, like my great-grandparents. And that's one of the things that I remember the most. That's what this day reminds me of. It's really humbling to think that this day reminds me that Dr. King was not some legend that we should aspire to be. Rather, that, like my great-grandmother, we should take his work and everything he achieved to the next level, that there's still a lot of work ahead of us, and that we as the future generations are responsible for growing beyond what he had accomplished in order to face and prepare for the next set of challenges, for affordable housing, for equal pay, for climate change. There's so many other challenges ahead of us, and we can't face them alone, that we have to organize and unify our efforts and get together, but most importantly, be humble enough to allow ourselves to be inspired by others and not think that we could do it ourselves by our own merit. And to that end, we just got to continue to believe greater and hope better and strive harder, so that we can make today and tomorrow better than yesterday.